Look at this dude.
You think he might be happy?
To the Packers of all teams. No.
Holy crap, man!
It's Rodgers running for the score.
So, I'm going to be honest, guys. I don't know if there was another perfect timing for this video. We're going through NFL defenses. We're going to be ranking them. That's obviously the main part of this. Not really Micah Parsons trade. I'll talk about that in a minute. But, yeah, Dallas fans. I mean, guys, at this point, just like Houston. Like, I don't know what to tell you guys. Your hockey team, which, again, most of you guys aren't because, let's be honest, no one really watches hockey. But if you do like watching hockey, that team can't win a damn thing. Luka, bro. That doesn't even look that bad right now. And oh my God, guys, the Cowboys. They're a circus. I'm going to call them that until they get an NFC championship. But yes, what the heck just happened? And with that, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fun NFL. Please like and subscribe if you guys enjoy this special 2025 NFL defense power rankings, I guess is what we're going to call it. True power rankings will be coming out pretty soon. Offense, though, and some other things we'll have to get through before then. Predictions are coming out very soon as well. Packers and Cowboys play in Week 4 on Sunday Night Football, if I'm not mistaken, so that will be probably the game of the year. At least that, no, it's not that big, but still, obviously with the Micah Parsons trade. And all that debacle, it's going to get Jerry Jones his attention that he always needs. And again, we look at that, 2 first-round picks in Kenny Clark. I'm going to be honest, guys, Kenny Clark wasn't great last year. I talked about that in the Packers draft grade a little bit more in depth. But, yeah, I wasn't too big on his season last year. But, again, going to the Cowboys, replacing Mozzie Smith, who I guess will probably not start. They didn't really need to make that move again if they just played him right. But Mozzie Smith probably taking a step back with Oso Diggies, who will also being there one of the better defensive tackles in football. Really a nose tackle. Try not to rant there. They also got 2 first-round picks. An absolute haul. But at the end of the day, only 2 for Micah Parsons. It's pretty crazy considering he's probably the most talented defensive player in football. I think that's the best way we could put it. Other than that, though, I think there's something else that I'm forgetting about. Oh, yeah, predictions. That'll definitely be a part of it, this as well. Again, if I remember what I was going to say. We'll get to that. Anyway, though, I will be ranking every single, again, this will be for the next 3 tier rankings. I will be ranking every power ranking, I guess, is what we're at this point. Again, tier week's coming to an end pretty soon. I guess it goes pretty fast. But worst defense is number 32. The best defense is number 1. They get a bunch of crap in the middle. And this is very subjective, to be honest with you guys. I didn't go really think about like how talented is every single position. I'm thinking, is this a defensive coordinator that knows what the heck he's doing? Is this a group that has a pretty good scheme running and pretty good thing established? And have they been good last year? And if they haven't, have they gotten better enough in a lot of ways? And do I think they will be good this year? So there's a lot of different things that go into this. But we'll start with that number 32, and I really didn't want to put them in number 32, but I really think they'll be this bad. That's the Saints. This is a defense that is aging. They lost their one guy in that secondary that I was still somewhat trustworthy in, and Tyrann Mathieu. Nothing against, is it Justin Reed? Is he there? I think he's on there, right? Nothing against Justin Reed. He's a very reliable player, but I don't think he's not going to really give you like some sort of upside in terms of playmaking overall. The Saints defense just struggles with a lot of different things, mainly the fact that, again, I don't see this group consistently stopping the run, and the fact that I could definitely see that being an issue throughout the season. Yeah, that's definitely going to be something to watch out for. Other than that, again, their defensive line is either really old. You got a guy who isn't the number 1 pass rusher in Kyle Granderson, and then an interior defensive line that's absolutely terrible. Lots of Brian Bresee, and he's bad against the run. So, DeMario Davis obviously is a great linebacker, but, again, he's old, and, again, he's only can do so much against the run. This, I think, will be a group that struggles big time against that, and that'll open up some big pass plays with a pretty susceptible secondary overall. With that said, though, at number 31, who did I have there? What did I say? The Titans, maybe? I'm just going to go, where are they? There we go, the Titans. Titans defense is probably one of the worst, if not the worst in football outside of, I'll get them in a little bit, last season. Their linebacker situation is absolutely awful. They traded Ernest Jones at the trade deadline, didn't get the most for him. Cody Barton isn't bad, but James Williams Sr., who's looking in training camp, I got to be honest. But Cedric Gray has honestly been a bust, not really getting, what is he, 5th round pick maybe? No, he was a 4th round pick. So he hasn't been good. It's a bad linebacker situation. Their edge rushing situation is suspect, despite Olufemi Oladajo maybe having a pretty good season. The secondary is a lot of who knows what happens. Again, Jerry Sneed's coming off an awful season. The safeties are good. That's probably the one part of this defense I'm pretty confident in. But Jarvis Brownlee Jr., again, good rookie season, but like, is he really going to be a true boundary corner? And then Jordan McCreary's been a good slot. So they have pretty good things going on for them. I just don't see this group really projecting super well, especially in a division that I think they will struggle in a little bit. Again, except if they're playing the Colts. Again, this is just Titans defense that I don't really believe in, and I don't really see how they're going to be anything more than maybe okay. But like at the same time, it's just not the greatest situation there. When we have at 30, I just want to spoil it. I mean, you can see some of these teams, but like Panthers, okay, Carolina, yeah. You're at 30. The reason I put you here is because you were like historically bad against the run last year, and the only reason you were even a little less bad in 2023 when you guys were absolutely putrid was because you had what is his name? Derek Brown. And Derek Brown got injured last year, didn't really play at all last year. And again, what do you think happened? Yeah, their run defense was historically bad. Their linebackers aren't great. They don't tackle the best. Again, Josie Jewell's not the worst. Their secondary is really just, let's be honest, J.C. Horn. And then, again, the pass rush is pretty weak overall outside of, again, a guy like Derek Brown. But at the same time, it's not the worst defense in the world. But, again, they don't really have many star players. And the fact that this defense was so awful last year, I don't really see how they're going to get too much better considering they didn't really do much to improve this defense, is a little bit concerning. With that said, though, at number 29, we finally get to the Bengals. Again, people are thinking, wow, they're absolutely trash. The defense is hot garbage. It's not really true because they're actually a lot more talented than these three groups, especially with Trey Henderson being a premier defensive player. Again, I understand some people are like, oh, he's not like this elite guy. If you watch my edge rusher rankings, I do believe that. You don't have to, I guess, but again, he obviously is. He got his contract raise, not really what he actually wanted, but again, it's a lot better than what he, I guess, getting like nothing. But still, for the Bengals, their secondary has a lot of talented but inconsistent players. Their linebacking core, I think, is still pretty solid despite Jermaine Pratt leaving. Again, he never was the greatest, but solid, consistent play from him. Again, Logan Wilson obviously is their highest end probably guy outside of Trey Anderson on that defense. And then the D-line also has a lot of questions, which is, again, is the biggest thing there. So it's not the fact that, again, they're not the most talented because they have some pretty talented players. It's just there's definitely some holes, a lot of question marks. And again, I'm really counting on Shamar Stewart to kind of make this defense be somewhat have some sort of depth to it. Depth, there we go. As well as the fact that, again, the defense coordinator is complete mystery, as well as the fact that this scheme was absolutely broken for parts of last season. So with that said, that is why they were 29th. 28th, I have the Las Vegas Raiders. Simply put, this is one of the least talented defenses in the NFL. Their secondary has some good players, but the safety room outside of Trayvon Mulray is a little bit of a mess. I like their edge rusher group, except the fact that Tyree Wilson really hasn't put anything together yet, and the interior of their D-line could use some work as well. So there's a lot of just kind of not great parts working together, despite having a generational player in Max Crosby in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, obviously, this is a defense that was completely terrible for a lot of last year, and again, they're going to have to do a lot to get better. But at the same time, this is the defense that never really has been that good either, so kind of makes sense. 27 is the Dolphins, mainly because I don't know what's going on at cornerback with them. Again, they have some guys that are battling things out, and I don't think it's the end of the world with that. But the fact, again, you look at Cater Coe, who, again, being injured too, it's just a complete mess. I understand that Micah makes his second year a little bit less of, I call it just a black hole. But their linebackers aren't the greatest for me. And I understand Jordan Brooks can tackle. I get that. But the edge rushers are injury prone. Let's put it as it is. Chop Robinson is probably the only guy in that D-line that I'm super excited to watch. Obviously, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb when they're out there are fun to watch, but again, they're just always an injury sort of thing. The D-line, again, is pretty fun as well, but overall it's not the most well-rounded, outside of a guy like Zach Sealer. So they should get some pretty good pressure. But outside of that, I don't really see where this defense is going to be that good this year. I think there will be games where they get absolutely torched, and they'll give up 30 or 40 points, and it just won't be fun to watch as a Dolphins fan. Up next, we got the Jags defense. They were probably the worst overall outside of the Bengals last year, technically, statistically. Their secondary is kind of a mess right now. It's not a bad mess. It's just what are we going to expect from this group? Again, we all know that, again, Travis Hunter, when he's better than Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones, I'm going to be honest, bro, you're kind of a scrub. You're not a bad player, but you're just not someone that I want to see on the field. But Travis Hunter, again, he's going to be split an arm and a leg to really be able to do anything. But Eric Murray's okay. Andrew Winger's not a starter. Tyson Campbell's the most talented guy in this entire defense. I really do think that. I understand you have, we'll get to that in a little bit, but yeah, he's really the only thing that I think will keep this secondary together. Jordan Lewis is kind of a below average slot at this point. The D-line, the linebacking core is kind of a little bit of a weird part. Again, Devin Lloyd and Foyce Lucan are very established, but the depth isn't great. Dennis Gardeck I do like, though. And again, we obviously look at that D-line, and it's a lot of who knows in the interior in terms of how good production you actually get. Elite edge rushers, though, overall. So they do have that going for them, but the fact that this group doesn't really force takeaways at an efficient rate, as well as the fact that they will give up yardage pretty much at a bad clip every single game, is just going to kind of put them in a tough spot. But overall, the Jags aren't a terrible defense. It's just a matter of the fact that they're not always going to give you even average play, and then there are going to be games where they will get, again, like I said, absolutely roasted. 25, we have the Indianapolis Colts. This is a defense for a while now that has not given you solid production, at least statistically, especially in terms of EPA per play, which I don't love as a stat, but it has consistently given you pretty good trends. And we're talking about like a good statistic. It is a decent one, at least if we're talking that by the numbers. But again, some people could argue otherwise. But for the Colts defense, this is a D-line that has no, again, I understand their interior is pretty solid overall. It's really good, actually. But their edge rushers, no one's, again, outside the same Zambi Cobb is coming off an injury. It's kind of a big mess there. Linebacker is not great because, again, Zaire Franklin's the only one who can tackle there. And their secondary is suspect, to say the least. Because Jalen Jones is just not starting right now. I don't know what's going on with him. He's kind of stinking up. Cam Bynum's good. Nick Cross is, again, is a playmaker. Daniel Scott has battled himself back. I think, honestly, could start over Nick Cross at some point. But Kenny Moore, again, this secondary has, names for sure. I just don't know if they're going to really work the West together. And again, the fact they don't have a number 2 corner is a big concern. Mekhi Blackman is not a guy you want to see on the field consistently. So, yes, this is a Colts defense that has a lot of issues. But at the same time, I think they will at least be a little bit less of a variance than like a Jaguars team, for instance. At number 24, we have the Atlanta Falcons. This is a defense that can, again, for like, what is it now? The past, 8 years, hasn't gotten any pressure. They're trying to change the narrative there by those 2 first-round picks. They made very aggressive, very ill-advised moves, in my opinion. Their D-line is absolute shit. I'm just going to be honest. I don't really swear that often, but that's probably the best way to put it. Brandon Dorless has been a bust. David Onyemata is really the only guy that I think is that good. Rugo Oro has been awful. Zach Harrison is just kind of there. The linebacking core is kind of a mess. Line Diablo isn't very consistent. Caden Ellis isn't always the best in terms of tackling, which is an issue. And their edge rushers, again, are kind of, like I said, you got 2 young guys, and then, again, a consistent guy in Leonard Floyd and Arnold Ebiketie, who's been bad. Their secondary has a lot of fun names, but is it really proven? Not really. Again, they don't have really anyone outside of Asia Trail on the boundary. I like what's going on at safety, though. And they got Billy Bowman, who should be pretty good at in the slot. So again, there's just straight up holes in this defense, and until they get filled, or they don't get filled, I definitely see this defense getting held back despite having a pretty actually decent amount of potential. Number 23 be the Dallas Cowboys. Again, we all know they'd be higher if they had still had Micah, but they don't, and they have absolutely no pass rush now. It's again kind of a lazy take, you could argue, but Oso Odigizua isn't what you again. He's a solid pass rusher overall for the being a really good nose tackle, but he's not some elite guy. You can't count him to be some number 1 guy. Like, again, it's very rare to find that in the first place. But you get the point there. And then you got Kenny Clark, who, again, let's be serious, guys. He's not going to give you that pressure. And then off the edge, like, bro, you got to be serious. You can't actually be thinking that'll really work out. And then their secondary is also a little bit suspect coming off those injuries and stuff. And also their linebacking core. Are those guys, especially a guy like DeMarvin Overshown, going to be able to play at an elite level like actually was able to last year? It's like they don't have any actual high-end talent. Again, losing DeMarcus Lawrence as well, who was a stalwart as a run defender for them, is a huge issue. This Cowboys defense is just simply put is very average for me. But at the same time, they still have some very high-end players. Again, like I said, there's nothing would scream like a really elite talent. But again, Deron Bland, when he's healthy, is pretty darn good. Same thing with Trayvon Diggs. And then the safeties are also very good, so I'll give them their credit there. But at the same time, this is definitely a defense that has again, you could argue is even lower than this. But I don't think they're not going to play you at a level because they just force turnovers at the end of the day. Bears are at number 22. This is a defense that, again, secondary-wise, has a lot of talent, but they really aren't coming off the greatest of seasons, again, specifically being a guy like Tyreek Stevenson. Or you could even argue Jalen Johnson in some ways, but their safety's really adapted well outside of Juwan Brisker getting injured and stuff. The linebackers are obviously very, very good. A lot of continuity there. The D-line, though, is a big question all across the board, which, again, is kind of what worries me a lot because, again, if you don't have a pass rush, you don't really have a defense, to be honest with you guys. So until that really gets established, I don't really see how this defense can be any higher than that. What do we got at 21? The Bucs. So this is a Bucs defense, in my opinion, that just simply is lacking a true number 1 edge rusher. Again, with them bringing in, what's his name? Hassan Reddick, they definitely have the chance to have that. Yaya Diaby, I think, is just kind of, I won't call it rotational, maybe a solid number 2 guy with, again, good run defense capability. The D-line, the interior of the D-line looks absolutely bonkers. I think that'll lift me a really good group. Again, Logan Hall isn't my number 1 guy, but he's pretty solid. And then we look at the secondary, there's a lot of fun names, but really no one who's a proven guy outside of, obviously, Antoine Winfield Jr. and Jamel Dean, which, again, is really the only thing that's kind of holding that defense back. On top of the fact that, again, let's be honest, they are not the most talented. That's probably just the best way to put it. We'll see what happens to the Bucs, though. Todd Bowles always makes them play well. That's also why they're here, even though, again, if they're maybe not the most highly sought after. All right, moving up, we got the Rams at 20. I want to put them higher, but they were absolutely abysmal statistically last year. I don't want to say that's, again, a great thing, but again, there were games last year where they were absolutely awful. It's just the simple truth about it. As well, again, in terms of this pass rush, is probably one of the higher projecting ones in the entire NFL. The secondary, in a lot of people's opinions, isn't great. I like them a lot, though, but I have to be pretty realistic here in terms of the overall picture with them right now. There's definitely a good chance they will suck at times, even though, in my opinion, it's a very talented defense with an insanely high ceiling. And towards the end of last year, they were a lot higher. I want to talk myself into putting them higher, but they were so bad statistically last year, and their linebacking core that is really frustrating me right now. That's a big part of the reason they're this low. But again, realistically, it could absolutely be a top 10 defense. But again, I think overall, in terms of yardage-wise, they will give a pretty decent amount of yardage, which will hurt them overall. In terms of, again, we're talking about a statistical angle there. But realistically, they should be higher than this. But again, until Chris Shula, again, can really be consistent. I don't think he was the most consistent last year, despite, again, them being really good in the playoffs. That's beside the point. This defense can be great, but they're definitely inconsistent. Seahawks. The reason they're at 19 is because I don't trust their pass rush. I understand their secondary overall is still great. Again, really nothing changed there. Outside of Julian Love maybe being a little bit worse here than what you saw in 2022 and 2023, where he was an absolutely elite safety at times. The linebackers I don't really care about. They're good players. Again, getting Chris Paul Jr. in that building is crazy. I'm still pissed that the Rams let him go. But yes, that D line is in that edge rushing group overall is a little bit questionable in my opinion. Not bad. It's just like, is that really going to give you really good production? Commanders are 18. They're a funeral home, but they still have a lot of solid players. Again, you could argue they're probably a lot lower than this, but I think this is definitely one of the top 5 in terms of forcing turnovers overall. Marshall Lattimore is a true number 1 corner. I understand he hasn't been healthy in a while. Who cares? Trey Amos is scary to me, but Jonathan Jones can still play the boundary pretty well. Mike Sanders still is a absolute X factor there. Quan Martin, Will Harris is not good, but I think Quan Martin will do a good job. I'm just simply honest, guys. I understand this is a defense that's old and has a lot of just not great names. But I think they will find a way to be a valuable group for a lot of people. And also, again, there's a good again. I understand that again that offense did a lot for that team last year. But this defense was able to force a lot of turnovers. And again, the fact they got guys in like Bobby Wagner and Frankie Lou, who I think is a top 5 linebacker in football. Again, it's gonna be a big thing here. I understand. I gotta get this preface. This defense is old. They got a lot of washed players, but they also have a lot of talented players too. Again, this is a defense that I think, despite not having the youth as these next 3 teams below them, they also have I think a lot more potential to be just be really stingy. They're not a great defense. We all know that. They're just not very great overall. But I think they're definitely a little bit more consistent than what you'll see out of these 3. I think, who do we have next? The Cardinals, maybe? The 49ers, all right. 49ers defense, let's be honest, was pretty bad last year. They still got Nick Bosa, though. He's still one of the best edge rushers in football. Again, losing Drake Greenlaw isn't good, but they still have those, looking at this overall, they got Deommodore Lenoir. Again, they have a very interesting secondary. I won't call it great, but it's definitely interesting. And again, the D-line linebacking core, I don't really have too many questions about. I think it'll be a decent defense, but overall, they're definitely missing something from what they had just a couple years ago, even like you could argue started last season. All right, up next is the Cardinals. I think this Cardinals defense just screams average to me because there's really no complaints I have about them. I understand that, again, overall, they're not the greatest group in terms of talent. We look at that D-line, there's just no one who's like, oh my god. I mean, there's someone, but still. Outside of that, though, their linebacking core doesn't really draw too many big concerns for me. The secondary I actually like projected this year. I just think they'll be a solid group. At least, again, I think they'll finish 16th overall as well. Again, I didn't talk that like really with all these teams, but like in terms of actually like, look at again how they will actually finish. I think that'll lift me in terms of scoring. Definitely see them in 16th. 15th defense in football. I have the Vikings. The Vikings, the biggest issue for me is the fact that their secondary is a little bit frightening to me. It's not a bad group by any means. I just don't know if they all can play man. And again, Brian Flores' system, I think that'll be a collapse from them. I think they'll be very susceptible to big plays. I understand the D-line is pretty darn good. The linebacker core has a lot of good players as well. The talent's there. I just don't know if, again, over a full season, they will really be able to be that good, despite having, again, a pretty darn good group overall. And again, in the fact, again, they're a little bit lower respect that I think this Lions defense has a more stable group of players in the scheme they are fit in, as well as having just a better player on their entire defense than Aiden Hutchinson than the Vikings have. So you have that as well. But again, the Lions, again, I understand they were pretty bad towards the end of last year. Their linebacking core is a little bit better, at least going into the season. The secondary should be pretty darn good. Get the two of the probably the best safety duo in football, at least going into the season. And again, their D-line has a little bit of questions, but again, when you have a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, who really cares? So that's kind of why they're there. Aiden Hutchinson definitely does a lot of heavy lifting. Jets are at 13. I expect the bounce back season from Sauce Gardner. The fact they have the best linebacking core in football, and also the fact they have a very fun defensive line. I don't see how this defense is in top. Again, doesn't finish as like a seeded playoff defense. It's probably the best way to put it. Aaron Gunn will make this defense better. Even though I understand again they might get a little bit more yardage in terms of passing, but they have the Lions secondary didn't have a guy like what is it called? Sauce Gardner, even though Sauce Gardner isn't coming at the greatest season. I understand also that Jets secondary isn't maybe as well-rounded as the Lions was coming into last year, but at the same time, I like this Jets defense a lot. They should be pretty darn good. 12 Packers. Again, like I said, pretty obvious reason the Packers are this high. It's not a great defense. Micah Parsons is a guy that can take your defense from where the Cowboys are to where the Packers are. I honestly might have flipped them. Not really. Again, the Packers would probably Cowboys would probably be around here. But the Packers secondary is very scary for me. I understand that their safety duo is very fun. But the fact, again, this cornerback room is kind of a mess, and their linebacking core is kind of disappointing in a lot of ways. I don't really care, to be honest with you guys, because they got Micah Parsons. Rashawn Gary can actually be a true number 2 edge rusher. I think that's what he will be able to really thrive in, maybe give you 12 sacks even. But again, Micah Parsons is probably the most talented defensive player in football, and he does transcend this defense immensely. Again, even though realistically, outside of that, this defense really isn't the most talented. 11, I think I can probably go from here, right? We got the Bills. Bills simply put, I don't think they have an elite player in that defense. Again, there's some dogs, I understand that. But there's really no hole in it. We look at this. Safety isn't the most fun. Again, it's pretty deep, though. They're again, Taylor Rapp is coming off a pretty solid year. Stravius White starting is absolutely just terrible. They do not have a number 2 corner as of the moment, again, with Maxwell Harrison. What even happened to him? What happened to Maxwell Harrison? How do I completely miss this? Oh, okay. So, yeah, Maxwell Harrison being injured is a big issue, but when he's on the field, they're very, very good. Marcus Ingram is not good. The lineman core is very solid. Matt Milano not starting is kind of, I'm a little bit confused, but Shaq Thompson, let's be honest, at this point, is probably a better player than him right now. The D-line is very solid. Again, there are questions with Joey Bosa, but I don't really see a true hole outside of, again, the cornerback issue right now at the moment, and it's not it's pretty deep as well. Again, it's just a more, honestly, I don't say well-rounded, but just more stable defense than what we've seen up to this point. Number 10, I think I have the Patriots, right? Yeah. We'll keep going. I think I can get this down from here. But Patriots, they're at 10. Simply put, secondary probably top 5 in football. They're one of the best, if not the second best cornerback in football in Christian Gonzalez. Outside of that, though, their D-line is kind of weak overall. Again, they have a guy like Keon White who'll give you premier pass rush. But the linebackers I like a lot as well. Again, it's just the fact that these edge rushers don't really move me too much. But still, it's very good defense. 9 with the Browns. They're still one of the more talented groups in football. Again, with Myles Garrett there, you always got to give them the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, last year they weren't awesome. They were still pretty solid, though. Again, losing Martin Emerson is definitely a big issue for me. They'd probably be higher without that. But again, even with Greg Newsome, who again, I honestly think isn't coming off the greatest year, but still could have a bounce back year. And obviously, Denzel Warren's one of the best cornerbacks in football. Linebackers got J.O.K. again, he got injured last year, but he's one of the best linebackers in football. And they also have some pretty good supporting cast outside of that. Again, they're not maybe the most unlike we'll say the Bills, they don't have as much depth on that defense overall. But all those guys will give you solid play, and again, the stars will definitely carry the load as well. I was lying. We have the Giants. Okay. Giants are at 8. I might argue they could be higher. The reason they're not higher is because, I don't know, maybe because they don't have a great secondary. But yeah, Paulson and Davo should be fun to watch. Their safety room is pretty good. I don't know. Their secondary just, again, it's the cornerback that's just kind of getting me. Linebacker isn't the best. It's pretty solid, though. And again, obviously, their edge rushers and their D-line are pretty darn good. Yeah, there's really no reason they're not a top 10 defense. Again, if you don't say otherwise, you're just lazy, to be honest with you guys. 7, Eagles. This is still obviously a very, very, very talented defense. Quinyon Mitchell, I might even argue, will win Defensive Player of the Year, which sounds like an absolutely crazy take, but I honestly see it happening. Again, if things work out. Again, Odoriat Jackson's a little bit questionable, but outside that, you got to really like what's going on in the secondary. Again, safety comp is a little bit of an issue because neither one of those guys I really see at the moment as true starters. But they're again, I understand they lost Milton Williams, which honestly I don't think is the biggest loss. Jalen Carter, I think, will be an absolute monster this year, which isn't really much of a take at all. Jalen Hunt getting the start is pretty fun. Joshua Uche, Aziz Ojolari, and Ogbo Okoronkwo. I mean, not really Ogbo Okoronkwo, but they got very good things going on there. Jeremiah Trotter starting is interesting. Jacoby Dean, what happened to you, bro? He's in the PUP. So he'll be out the first 4 games. That hurt this defense a lot, but they're very talented. They've got some great, they got some like 3 or 4 elite players. That's kind of holds them there. At number 6, we have the Steelers. They will be great. We all know they will be because they have probably second or third best pass rush in football. Derek Harmon isn't screaming at me as a guy that will have a great rookie season. I just didn't value him to that level, but at the same time, there's only so bad he can do. And obviously, the safeties, they're pretty good too. So, yeah, the Steelers defense is really good. They haven't really been bad in probably like 10 years at this point. You could argue 2018 they weren't great, but that's besides the point. At number 5, who do we have at number 5? I think I have the Chiefs. The Chiefs just aren't a defense that has all these emerging elite players. Because Trey McDuffie's obviously one of the best cornerbacks in football. Chris Jones, still as an interior guy, he probably isn't the best by any means, but he's still very, very good. George Karlaftis is a true number 1 edge rusher. Leo Chanel is a great linebacker. They got a lot of good things in that secondary, as well as some decent depth. They've been absolutely phenomenal the past 2 seasons for the Chiefs outside of the Super Bowl. But yeah. This Chiefs defense, I think, is just, they've carried the load the past years for the Chiefs, and I think they definitely deserve that credit, but they might not be at the same place as they were. You could even argue as like number 2 or number 3 with how they were going into last year, but they're still great, and again, there's really no reason they shouldn't be any lower. All right, number 4, I'm going to say is the Chargers. They're just not a group for me at this point that I think is always great in big-time games. They again, statistically, they were like a top 2 or 3 defense last year in scoring. They got some very, very good players. Again, they drafted very well last year, and again, they reaped the benefits. The secondary is very fun to watch. The linebackers are very consistent. And obviously, the D-line and pass rush have their upside. So that's why they're number 4. Really nothing bad I can say about them outside of, again, some depth pieces there. But number 3, we got the Texans. Fantasy-wise, they're like number 1 for everybody. But I'll go in depth on this Texans defense. Again, they have probably the best pass rush duo in football with Will Anderson and Dino Hunter. The interior of the D-line is probably the only, they're not great. But Henry 202, Azeez Al-Shaair, and Christian Harris aren't the greatest linebacker core. But again, you put them all together, and they're pretty solid. Jake Hansen back in this team is pretty good on this team, not back. On this team is also a big help. Secondary is just completely just gross. It's awesome. Again, it's one of the best secondaries in football. They'll get a lot of picks. They'll be tough to play, but maybe not week 1. So again, if you're a Texans fan, you might have the Texans defense. I would not start them week 1. Whatever though. Broncos at 2. What do I say about this Broncos defense? They had the best pass rush in football last year statistically. Pat Surtain's probably the best defensive player in football. I'm joking. He's definitely the best cornerback though. Their linebackers are great playmakers. There's really no bad thing to say about this team except a weaker safety group. But yeah, they're going to be really good this year. Number 1 is the Ravens. Their pass rush, despite not having like an elite number 1 guy, is still great. Their secondary, I think, will be very, very tough to throw the football against, and their linebacking core is really, really freaking good. The Ravens have the best defense in football. They've got every single level an elite player. To an extent, and I don't really see how this defense isn't going to be the best in football, again, especially statistically, but yeah, there are my defense rankings. If you have any questions about the Micah Parsons trade or anything like that, or if you're a disgruntled fan with your ranking on defense, well, I don't know, comment down in the section below. See you for offenses tomorrow, and of course, we got to end it like this.
We're going to rely on our corners and our secondary who've come through time and time again, but they can't keep letting Aaron Jones run this down their face.
Fake it to him here. Love, back foot, has a man wide open, and it's going to be caught by Musgrave, racing towards the end zone. He is in, touchdown, Green Bay.
Of offensive football, this is the old Y throwback. You see Musgrave, he goes down, it's going to be a bootleg away from him, and he just comes out the back door.